if it's more just cultural types of things and it's not really stretching your mind, it does make it difficult for people to, move forward.
Yeah. So I constantly remind myself of Alexander Pope, his essay on criticism. And he says, drink deep or taste not the Pierian springs, for shallow draughts intoxicate the brain. And drinking
Wow.
again.
Say that again. Say that again.
It's actually like Alexander Pope's essay on criticism,
Okay.
which is a lovely poem. It basically, it's little knowledge is a dangerous thing is something we all know.
Mm-hmm.
And Pope actually tells us, drink deep or taste not the Pierian springs, for shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us again, for a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Wow. Why do you need me here when you've got wisdom like that, being shared? What am I? That was fantastic. I've written it down. I should have heard that
I think
before.
maybe just to answer your anxiety, we are used to Swami sir, and I think we need a change, and that's why we have Jones.
In other words, he's asking me to shut up.
Else, I think it's a walking encyclopedia and a Wikipedia for me at least. A lot of people in the organization. We need Jones there. So.
Well, you're kind, and I was going to let you know I will send Amia. I will send a PDF of my slides today so that you can send that along to people, and you'll have those pieces. I sure will. Since we've got about looks like about 4 minutes, what I am going to do today, just kind of the way I find to wrap my passions and different things, is to talk about a particular topic. I am never comfortable just talking about me and those things. So I'm going to talk about how do we thrive now, and it'll encompass a lot of the key ideas that I talk about in my books, in my teachings, those types of things. So that'll be our focus today. Is in this world of uncertainty right now, how do we thrive professionally and personally? And I've got 5 ideas that I will offer today, and so that's just to let you know my focus and my direction today. That's what I'll be doing.
Wonderful. I think people talk about surviving. Thriving is a much more powerful word.
Right.
So I think I definitely connect to, and I look forward to writing down every one of those 5 ideas.
Well, if you'll wait to get the PDF, then you won't have to. But so you're like me, you're old school. You need to engage your mind in writing those things down because science shows you'll remember it more if you write it down.
Exactly. I'm old school. Over to you, Deepa. And, we got 3 minutes, so I'll go on mute. One of you will take over the session at 4, right?
No, Anis will take over, sir. It's 2 minutes more. And Anis, we are planning to start at 4 sharp. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I hope my audio is, is it better? Because I have some background noise. I hope it is audible.
This is better now, Anis.
Yeah, okay. Because
I think you're in the car or something.
Outside, there's a little bit of vehicle movement, and because of which it tends to be a little more noisy. So I just got into the car.
Yeah, this is much, much better. Yeah, thank you. We'll start in a minute. Anis, you can start.
Hi, good afternoon all. Welcome to the e-Mandhaara. I think it's a very, very exciting and interesting session today. Would be a personal best for me. We have somebody, and actually the way I would like to introduce uh, the speaker today is for my own personal journey. And by the way, I have actually implemented this. It works very well. Even more important for us to reflect on our lives. I think let me start with the question: is what do you do when your life feels as busy as a three-ring circus? I think these are available on the net. I actually have this as a personal note, and I always keep it with me. And what is three-ring circus? I'll just briefly talk about it. So there's a book called Juggling Elephants, a personal best for me. The author of Juggling Elephant is among us today, e-Mandhaara. And it tells a simple but profound story about a man with a universal problem. All of us, probably, or most of us, get into those kind of problems. So, a character called Mark, which has too much to do and a lot of priorities, a lot of stress, and very little time. And as he struggles to balance his many responsibilities without cracking under the pressure, he takes a break to attend the circus with his family. And very interestingly, the book connects each and every small part of the circus to the personal life. And that's the beauty of how the author connected our lives to these three rings in the circus. So what usually happens in a circus, and if many of you would have seen in your childhood, because nowadays I don't see them around, there is a surprising conversation with the ringmaster. And he leaves with a simple but powerful lesson. Trying to get everything done is just like juggling elephants. Impossible. Now he soon realizes that if you keep trying to juggle elephants, no one, including us or you, will be thrilled with your performance. So I think we end up doing a lot of these things, but we actually lose effectiveness in doing anything which is something very unique or a quality which you could do otherwise. A ringmaster cannot be in all the three rings at once. And the key to the success of a circus is having all quality act in all the three rings. And he talks about all these three rings and typically how well it connects to our personal lives. And most important thing is to take a break in. For example, now I'm on a road trip. It's like intermission in the juggling elephant. It's an essential part of any good circus because you need to give break for you to be more effective. You need to give time to your own self, and then only you can reflect on doing something better in life. I think no other than Jones Loflin, who's the author for Juggling Elephants, is among us today, can tell you how well this connects to our personal life. Over to you, John, and welcome to e-Mandhaara at Sasken.
Wow, Anis, thank you for that. Wow, that very kind introduction. I should take you on the road with me once I get back onto the road. What a beautiful introduction to my book, Juggling Elephants. I'm honored that is the connection that got me here with all of you today. It is great to be with you. I know you're near the end of your day, and if you're like me, when you reach near the end of your work day or just the day in general, your mind begins to wane and you get a little fatigued. So I will try to keep my speed to an appropriate one today. I tend to get a little overly excited sometimes about the things that I talk about, and so. Just please put into the chat if Jones, slow down if something is not coming through as it should. I will be PDF of my slides today when we are finished to the team so that it can be sent out to you so you can get the key ideas. Now I know normally in this time someone might talk about their life, their passions and those things, and I certainly will build some of that in. What I want to do today is to focus more on maybe how you can thrive right now. I mean, that's the phrase that I'm using a lot development that I'm doing here in the States, virtually, of course, is all around how do I thrive? How do I do more than just survive in this season of uncertainty? And so I want to offer you 5 ideas today that hopefully can help you. And it wraps many of the key philosophies and ideas that I have into the presentation. So with that, let's get started with that. As I said, just like you can see the picture on the screen, most of us feel like we're just drowning in a sea of so much going on. I mean, it's more than elephants right now. It's probably trying to juggle elephants in the ocean, if you will. So that's going to be our focus today. Anise did a beautiful job of telling a little bit more about my background. I have been in training and development for about 25 years. My background is education. And on the screen, you see some of the books that I have authored or co-authored. And then at the end, something I'm excited about is during this season, I got more serious about developing online courses and content that people could go and take because, of course, I'm not doing as much on-site, face-to-face presentations, and that's jonesu.com, U being for university. Now, there's one course. We've got a second one that's coming out next week on working from home successfully, and then I'll be building out other ones. I have a leadership course that'll be coming out in January at that site, jonesu.com. So that's who I am. That's my world. But I want to talk about yours today because that's what gets me excited, is being able to give people simple ideas that they can go and do something differently. I've had a successful interaction with all of you today. If when we finish, you say, okay, that's something I can go work on, tonight or tomorrow, or I can implement into my workday. I really thrive on the simple, not the simplistic, but the simple. That means simple is enough. Part of my background, one of the great blessings in my life was to be able to work with the author of the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And I'm sure, many of you have heard of that book. And I learned so much from him about the power of story and simple ideas that people could bring themselves to the situation and say, okay, where am I? Versus just go do these 5 things or 7 things and you'll be successful type of mindset. So getting people to think on their own and to make some, almost do some self-reflection, I think is key in helping people to grow. And as you have that reflection, I know that you're in a similar situation that we are here in the States, of all that uncertainty. And it just weighs on us, doesn't it? I mean, you talk about elephants. We've got so many right now, and we keep thinking they're going to get smaller or things are going to happen. And maybe they are in the next few weeks and months with the announcement about vaccines and different things. It looks like we're going to have a peaceful transition to of power here in the United States, which is something we're all, of course, excited about. But then there's all these other uncertainties that just keep popping up in this year 2020. And it can cause us, literally, like I said before, to just focus on status quo. Just let me get through this week, and then maybe next week, or just let me get through this month. And, maybe 2021 will be a better year. And we all hope that. But if we're not taking steps to make that happen in the way that we are growing ourselves professionally or personally, will we be ready? And we may find ourselves even further behind whenever that is, when things begin to open up or improve in some way. So again, I want to offer you 5 quick thoughts today. You are welcome to type things in the chat as you have questions. I'll also be taking questions at the end of our time today. But anytime you have a question, please let me know. I'd say to the team, if you don't mind, if just throw out that question. You will not hurt my feelings if you interrupt me. I would much rather answer someone's question if it's really important. You think at the moment it's asked versus holding it to the end, because I know some of you may not be able to stay the whole time either. So I want to be sensitive to that as well. Okay, we start with understanding how our brain works. And you're like, oh, come on, Jones. I mean, really? I mean, that's important to understand about how we thrive? Absolutely. And I'm a little bit of a I guess, of a neuro nerd, in that I love to understand, how our brain works, how our bodies work, so that I can be at, my peak efficiency. And four key ideas about our brain that I think help us understand why this season is so difficult for us, for many of us. First of all, our brains are lazy. They just don't, our brains don't like to use a lot of energy because it wants to protect that energy for the really important things. And so when we think about a lot of the things we're facing right now, decisions to make, corporately or individually, our brains are like, that's hard. And so if you've got something in front of you that you're working on or need to focus on, and you're saying, yeah, that's going to be kind of difficult, your brain says, yeah, go check your email, or go make that phone call, or hey, I think I heard a notification on your smartphone, go check that. And because our brain is not excited about us working on those things that are going to take a lot of energy. The second thing that happens is that our brain wants things done. Our brain doesn't like unfinished things. And if you think about that for a moment, think about all the things that are going on right now. Even just the question of when will the pandemic be over? When will the vaccines be available? Or when will the economy begin to improve or change, especially if it's affecting you negatively as an individual? And you don't have answers to those questions, and your brain doesn't like that because it wants things to be done. I'll bring it down to an even more basic level. If you check your email and you've got 15 new things in there, and you say, well, okay, I'll just kind of look over those. Yeah, now I'm going back. You have put 10 to 15 new ideas of things that may not be done into your brain, and now your brain's trying to process all that. Wait, you had that email from Anise, and you didn't respond to it. Don't forget that. And so now you're carrying around all this mental weight throughout the day, and then still you're trying to focus on what's important. It's hard for our brains to do that. Third, our brains get distracted so easy. They're information seekers, and so when we won't take the time to remove those distractions, is it any wonder that we can't focus? It's been interesting in my coaching work, working with a lot of clients who are now working from home, and their number one challenge is focused because they see so many distractions in their home. They hear so many distractions in their home. And so working with them on, you've got to remove those because your brain's looking for it. And so if you put it out there, your brain's going to see it. Your brain's going to respond to it. And then finally, our brains get tired. Our brains use 20 to 25% of our body's energy. Think about that for a moment. They use 20 to 25% of our body's energy. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves, the right food, hydration, rest, exercise, all those kinds of things, then our brain can't function at peak efficiency. And I don't know about you, but throughout this season, I've struggled to sleep as well as I normally do. I mean, please understand, I don't have all these things figured out. As I say in a lot of my presentations, when I have all of these things figured out about work-life balance and time management, then I'll probably be dead and it won't matter. So I find that I need to do a better job sometimes of helping myself get good rest. So I think it's important to start with your brain in that way. And that leads us to the second idea, is to identify what's weighing you down. What is it that feels heavy to you? Anise mentioned it earlier in Juggling Elephants. When you're trying to get everything done, it feels like you're juggling elephants and it's overwhelming. I think the key here is that when you have that feeling, you've got to begin to identify what is it that's heavy? What is it that's hard for you in the moment? And going back to the book that Anise mentioned, Juggling Elephants, this is that idea that your life is a three-ring circus. And so one of the ways you might identify what's weighing you down is it something related to work? Or is it something related to your own personal wellness? Or is it something, with relationships that's weighing you down? Now, some of you are looking at the screen right now and you're going, yeah, Jones, it's all three. And I understand that. But I think it's important to start somewhere. When I'm working with clients sometimes, I'll say, well, what feels heavy for you right now? Many times they'll say everything. I'm like, I can't help you with everything. You got to pick one or pick two, and then we'll begin to talk through that. So let me see if I can help you pick one or two today of what's weighing you down. Here's a potential list of things that might be weighing you down. And as you look at this list, I wonder, um, which one, do you go, oh yeah, that's mine. I wonder which one it might be. And some of you say, well, Jones, the whole list. Well, I understand, but see, this is the important part. You've got to identify one, and then you can take the steps to begin improving on that one. Again, a personal example. Very early on in 2020, once things started shutting down and things started changing, I'm an information seeker. I love to read news headlines and kind of stay connected. And so I found myself just consuming massive amounts of information, and I found that it was distracting me during my workday. Not that I was jumping off to necessarily go look at things that often, but it just, because I had all this new information in my head. And again, my brain didn't know what to do with it. And it's, okay, how will this affect your business? How will this affect your family? And so I was suffering from media overload. That was my elephant. And so I had to do something about it. And so my solution for me was to only engage in, reading the news and things like that about twice a day. Once I got up in the morning and had kind of taken care of a couple other things, I'll check in and see what's going on, read some headlines and get familiar with what's going on in the world. And then near the end of the day, I would check in again, go to a few of the news websites that I check, and then decide a little bit more about, okay, what's important for me to know here. And I found that by doing that, I wasn't, distracted throughout the day because I was checking late morning or at lunch or, going to some feed on social media to check the news. But that's an example, I think, of identifying what's weighing you down. Pick one and then begin to come up with some ways to address it. And I'm going to give you some hopefully some ideas about that in just a moment. Fun moment that I always love sharing with people wherever you're in the U.S. or somewhere else. The character Mr. Rogers was someone I grew up with in my childhood. I remember watching him on TV, on public TV here in North Carolina when I was growing up, and just a kind, genteel man who really introduced us to a bigger world and things. But there was a movie made about him, and Tom Hanks played the character Mr. Rogers. And I won't go deep into the movie, but there was a moment when they were really all struggling. I mean, there was an elephant they were all dealing with. It was the pending death of one of the main characters' family members, and Mr. Rogers is in the room with them, talking with them, and he says, it's sometimes difficult to talk about death, but death is a human condition. It's something we all face, and it's something we ought to be willing to discuss. And then he said this line that you see on the screen: if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And when he said that, I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah. What's one of the greatest challenges for us that keeps us from thriving is that we won't talk about it. We won't mention it. We won't identify it in our mind. But the minute we do, then we get the opportunity to address it. And if we're talking about it with a trusted person in our life, then hopefully they can give us some suggestions or ideas, or at least listen. And that sometimes is what I need more than anything else, is not solutions, but I just need somebody to listen to me ramble about how I'm stressed about this, or this is heavy to me right now. So I remind myself of this often. If it's mentionable, either to myself or to others, then it can be better managed. So that was the second idea. Now, the third one, as you can tell, we're kind of coming along with some maybe a little more tactical ideas as we move through, is building better routines. Because one of the things that happens in this season is that with the uncertainty, and we kind of let ourselves get out of some of our normal routines that might keep us focused and productive in all three rings. A great book I read probably about a year ago, and I love talking about it because there's so many great books out there that are just have so much information. In fact, I'm reading a great one right now by Annie Duke. It's called How to Decide. Oh, it is wonderful. But it's called How to Decide by Annie Duke. And I'm getting off track. I'm sorry, getting too excited. Let's go back to this one that's in front of you because it's powerful as well. BJ Fogg talks about building better routines, and because you put your mind on automatic, and it helps you to address those things that need to be addressed. Remember, I talked earlier about when I had media overload, I set up a new routine of checking it in the morning and checking it in the evening. Now, the key to setting up these habits and these routines is three things, and I love when he talks about the three keys to good routines, is because most of us do a good job with the first one, but we don't do as good a job with the second and the third element of this. We all have the motivation. We all have the desire to do better at something. I mean, let's just take a real basic one like exercise, if you will, physical exercise. We all want to be in better shape. We all want to take better care of our bodies. You know, we have the motivation, but then we wonder why we're not able to, well, if I want to do it, why am I not getting up and exercising? Why am I not walking after work? Why am I not, doing some stretching exercise at home? And the reason is because, first of all, we haven't asked ourselves, what's our capacity? What's our capacity? What's our ability, if you will, to exercise? I worked with one coaching client who wanted to work out an hour a day. And we looked at their schedule. We tried to figure out some things that were going to happen, and we set that up for them in their calendar, and they failed miserably. And I finally said to them, I says, what's your capacity? Do you have time at lunch that you could maybe walk a few minutes? Every day? And they were like, well, yeah, but that's not real exercise. I said, but you're not doing anything right now, because they didn't have the capacity to exercise for an hour. They did have the capacity to walk for about 15 minutes. So I think that's one of the keys is, what's my capacity? If you want to read more, as I talked about a moment ago, if you want to read more, then, what's your capacity? Is it 15 minutes a day? Great. Do that. If it's 10 minutes, do that, but start at something that is manageable for you. And then finally, it's the prompt. There's got to be some type of trigger, if you will, that causes you to engage in this routine. Let me share with you a really a strange one in my world, but it helps me. I don't do a good job with physical strength conditioning of my upper body. My job, of course, doesn't require me to have that, and I just kind of get lazy. I mean, I do a lot of cardio, but I don't do things to take care of my upper body. So several years ago, I started a really simple routine. I had the motivation. I wanted to strengthen my upper body. My ability was, well, what could I do? I don't want to go to a gym. It's too far away. It takes too long. So what I simply did was, every morning when my coffee is brewing, my K-Cup brewer starts, when I put the cup in there, I got on the floor and I would do 13 push-ups. Now, some of you are going, don't hurt yourself, Jones. I'm not. I wanted to do what my capacity would allow. And so I did those 13 push-ups, and it's become a habit now for me, because over the past, I guess now 6 years, every morning when that coffee's brewing, and yes, did it this morning, then I get on the floor and I'll do 17. I've worked up in that way, but that's the prompt. That's the trigger for me. So I think those are the key elements. If you want to start better routines, have the desire, but then what's your capacity? And then third, what's the trigger? What is it that's going to cause you to engage in that new behavior? And so it's consistent. It takes so much of the emotion out of it and makes it easier. So I guess my point would be with this, coming back to those three rings, is that what are some routines or habits that you could start? What are those things that you could begin implementing into one of those three rings that would help you to thrive more right now? And I would challenge you that don't try to start with all three, but just pick one. Which one of these rings do you see the most opportunity for improvement to help you thrive? It might be in how you work with your team members. It might be something related to personal wellness. It could be something about relationships. When this pandemic first happened, I could tell that my daughter wasn't thriving, my younger daughter, who's 17, and I'm trying to figure out as a dad, how do I be a better dad to her? I mean, because I didn't feel like she was thriving, and I wasn't thriving as being her dad. And so I realized that my daughter's she's a very affectionate person. She loves hanging out with her friends, and they're always giving the side hugs and high fives and different things. Of course, she wasn't hanging out with her friends, and so it dawned on me, I just need to be more intentional about hugging her. Now that sounds weird coming from me as a dad, but I realized that's what she needs. And so I was just get more intentional whenever I was going up for lunch, or sometime I'd see her, just a side hug or just a brush on the shoulder sometime. And she acknowledged it a couple weeks after I started doing it and said, that's been helpful. Now, I don't say that because I'm the hero. I say that because, wow, even small routines that we engage in, small changes we make in how we conduct ourselves professionally or personally over time can have a huge impact. So what routines or habits could you start that would help you thrive in some way? I think there's some other ways that some routines that we need to put in place, and I won't spend a lot of time on these, but it's planning your entire day. During this season, letting time, just kind of be there and not planned can cause you to start worrying and start thinking about things that aren't helpful, and maybe just wasting time. And so these are some of the key things that I believe we need to have in each one of our days. And of course, some of these would extend into the evening hours or maybe early morning hours, especially if it's the self-care. But I think this is important, is routines. Okay, have I taken care of these different areas during my day? I think it's important. And finally, kind of finish up on this idea, or actually I have a couple more thoughts on this, but is learning to say no. Now, I don't mean to your supervisor necessarily, or to those who need information from you or need you to do a certain amount of work, or even to a family member for that matter. But, I think one of the things that happens is that we don't do a good job communicating our elephants, our workload, or our life load sometimes. And a great book. Remember, I said I'm a reader, and so there's so many great books out there. A great book that I like on this topic is called The Power of a Positive No. And here's the way it works. And you're going to love this. In fact, of all the things I'll talk about today, this is probably the strategy that you will find most helpful. And so here it is. When someone asks you to engage in an activity or to take on something that you just go, oh, that's really just going to rock my world. That's going to cause me not to be able to get other work done that's a top priority, or it's not going to allow me to be able to engage with my family in the way I'd like to, or it's going to really, make it unhealthy, impact on my self-care, my personal well-being, then the way you approach it is not to start with no, but is to start with yes. And the yes is what's important to you. So if someone asked me to participate in even a virtual, Jones, our nonprofit group is having a conference next week, and we'd love for you to come on and do a 2-hour session on time management. Then I might start by saying, right now I'm up against some deadlines to create a new course at jonesu.com, or I'm working on settling my aunt's estate, which I am settling my aunt's estate. And I've got some deadlines that I'm trying to reach. That's really important to me because a lot of people are depending on me. Notice what I'm saying yes to there. I'm saying yes to those priorities in my life and what's important to me. And maybe if it's a work-related thing, you remind that person asking, these are what I understood to be the priorities. So that's where I'm focusing my time and energy, right now. So that's your yes. The no becomes logical then, because then you say, because of that, I'm going to have to say no. So going back to that example of me delivering a 2-hour virtual to a nonprofit organization, I'd say, because of those deadlines, I can't provide you a 2-hour session. Then the yes, this is where the magic happens. The yes is, could I come on and do a 30-minute one? Or could I pre-record a 30-minute time management session for your group and then you just play it then? because then I've got all kinds of options. First of all, it's only 30 minutes. But secondly, if I can pre-record it, I'll be up at 5 in the morning recording it, or at 9 o'clock at night, not having to be in the middle of the day where they wanted me to be, and not for 2 hours. But the book is called The Power of a Positive No. It's fantastic. I hope you'll get it and read it. If not, you've got the biggest key idea right here, which is yes, no, yes. And then finally, the other idea that I think is important, a routine to get into, and this is one that I never expected to have so much impact on me, was to quarantine your worry. You know, if we think about it, we're all worrying. Let's be honest. If someone says, "Oh, I'm not worried about anything," I just want to look at them sometimes and go, "You're a liar," because most all of us do have that thought, because we don't know what's going to happen. Our brain is saying to us, "Well, when's this going to be done? When's this going to be over? When is this going to start?" And so the strategy of quarantining your worry is that you literally find a place in your day or when you allow yourself to worry. Because if we don't choose that place, our brain chooses the most inopportune times, doesn't it? You're trying to focus on something at work and your brain says, "Well, you know, we haven't figured out that." And it's like, oh, and so then you're distracted. And so quarantining your worry is about finding, you know, a place to allow yourself to worry. I mean, literally putting it into your calendar, if you will. And the great thing about that is also gives you the opportunity to think about solutions. If you're trying to focus on other work and your mind starts, you know, wandering, and then you start to worry, you say, "Oh, no, I can't think about that right now. I've got to get back to work." But if you actually give yourself a place to worry, then whenever you say, "Okay," for me, it's during my exercise time in the morning. If I say, "Okay, when I'm exercising in the morning, I'm gonna think about that." Well, then that's the only thing on my mind at that point, and I start thinking about possibilities. And I'm not, you know, having other thoughts that I've got to try to push away so that I can, you know, just focus on that. So quarantining your worry. It's an interesting concept that I hope you'll try, and be happy to answer more questions about that as we finish up here in just a few minutes. So, all right, point number 4. Improve your ability to focus. I don't know about you, but that's one of my biggest challenges, is trying to stay focused in the moment. I mean, it's just hard for me because my mind is racing with all the possibilities and uncertainties and going on. A couple of ideas about how to improve your ability to focus. One of them is, I can't make it any more simpler than this, is just taking a deep breath. I mean, just do that right now. I mean, just hold it for just a second and then release it. Do you feel how your body just kind of resets a little bit? When I started wearing my Apple Watch probably about a year and a half ago, and I didn't turn off the notification that every once in a while would say, "Breathe." And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing in the world, to tell me to breathe or do that exercise. But I noticed that when it would pop up, I would go, "Yeah, I have kind of been breathing shallow for a while." And that caused me to get distracted. Physiologically, my body just can't focus as well. So taking a deep breath is one way. Walking through a doorway. I mean, talk about, you know, this is really nerdy stuff, but just walking through a doorway resets our, you know, our thinking. If you don't believe me, you know, think about when you've lost something. You walk through the door and you go, "Oh, I can't remember." That's because your mind dumped all the data it didn't need. But sometimes that's a good thing, because then you can reset your focus. Another one, and Daniel Pink has a great book called When, W-H-E-N, where he goes into great discussion about this, is to manage your energy and not your time. Is if you want to focus, is think about how your energy, you know, ebbs and flows during the day. You know, if you've got, you know, if you're the kind of person like me that you get up early in the morning and that's when you have your greatest energy, then maybe that's when you need to be looking at getting things done, because about 75% of us follow that model. We are at our best energy in the morning up till about lunch. We trough, you know, go down in the afternoon, and then we might rebound a little later in the day. Then about 25% of us start the morning in recovery. You know, I'm not a morning person, and then they don't really. I mean, they'll get some work done, but then they really hit a stride later in the day and even into the evening. And as much as possible, if you can begin to think about that and go, when are those times for me, and then planning that deep work more around those times. And I just think that's a really interesting way and simple way to improve your ability to focus. The Pomodoro technique. Again, not going to spend a lot of time with this one, but the Pomodoro technique is that strategy where you set a timer and you work for 20 minutes on one task, or 25 minutes on one task. Then whenever the timer goes off, you stop, stretch, assess, deep breathe maybe for a minute, and then you start another 25-minute segment. And it's a strategy that the number one thing about this strategy is very simply that you use a timer, and it's for a time period. Because if you're like me, sometimes if you don't do something like that, you're constantly looking at the clock. Okay, when's my next meeting? When's this happening? If you set a timer, you can get into more of that deep focus mode, because you know the timer is going to bring you out of it a little bit later. So the Pomodoro technique, you can search that and find some answers. Finally, determine what's required of you. In my research and finding quotes, and I always love those that help me and kind of shake me a little bit, determine what is required of you. I don't know how many times during this season I've said to my clients when they ask, how are you doing? Even to my wife when she says, how's the business? I said, well, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to make the best of a bad situation. And I came across this quote by Winston Churchill one day, and I'm like, I don't like this quote because it hits me too hard. But he said, sometimes it's not enough to do our best. We must do what is required. And when I started asking myself, what's required of you in this season? It's interesting how it changed my mindset to allowing myself and encouraging myself to be more uncomfortable, to try more new things, to make some new mistakes professionally, and then also just how I conduct myself in my personal life. Once I ask myself the question, what's required of you? It's not enough to let yourself out of the hook and say, well, I'm doing the best I can. Yeah, but what's required of you? And then finding the resources and the people to help that happen. So I guess as I begin to wind down with all of this information, what's required of you right now? What's required of you in this season to thrive? Is it just that you need to make some daily adjustments to your schedule and your plan? You need to set up some of those small routines. For some of you, maybe some skills that, like me, when I first started understanding the virtual world and virtual presentations, that I had to learn some new skills and how to work with my clients a little differently. So maybe that's the world. And then for some of you, you may literally be in that third column of you've got really upheaval of identity and purpose because of how the pandemic or the economic changes, or even personal changes in your life are affecting you. So I think that's the key, is stopping, going back to the beginning. What are your elephants right now? What's heavy to you? And once you identify it, so okay, what's that going to require of me to address it? Is it going to require me to make those adjustments, learn some new skills, or wow, do I need to do some more thinking about this because it really is a lot of upheaval in my world? Finally, as just a way to for us to stay connected, if that would be of value to you, you see on the screen my email, and if you would be interested in any of my free resources, here are a couple places to get started with those. I put out a 3-minute video each week just with a tip for the week, and so if you're interested in that, you see how to sign up for that. I also put out a monthly communication about how to improve, how to make the best choices with your time, work-life balance, leadership development, those types of things. My goal is to get as much information to you as possible in those documents. They are not hard sell in any way, but of course, always you can unsubscribe at any time, because I don't want to be an elephant in your inbox. So there's a couple ways for you to interact with me. With that, I have been at it for, looks like, about 35 minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see what questions we may have to get started.
That is wonderful. I think I'll break the inertia in terms of asking the first question. I like this model that you put up, Jones. This is Swami Krishnan. Mm-hmm. We spoke at the beginning. Work, self, and relationship. Most of us, and I struggle with this, so I won't say most, I'll say I struggle with I almost look at this as a cocktail jar. You know, I take a little bit of work, I take a little bit of the self, I take relationship, stir it up in a cocktail, and then it's all messed up. So I don't, it gets to my head like a martini. So
Yeah.
what's your advice? How do you compartmentalize?
Yeah. That's thank you for that. And Anise, I hope you're listening, because you may have the next book after that. Is that, you know, if you can come up with an analogy about cocktails and martinis. So I love that, Swami. Thank you. You ask about how you compartmentalize it, and that goes back to the model of the circus. I think, you know, the ringmaster. You know, if you're in control, which, you know, that's the model, is that, you know, the ringmaster knows they need to be in the right ring at the right moment. And so it's asking yourself in this moment, where is it most important for me to be? And of course, I say this sometimes, you know, if you're at work, which ring is most important for you to focus on? And people go, well, work, of course. Okay. Are you doing that? And so if you are, then that means that you've got the smartphone moved away from you, or at least all the notifications turned off. It also means that morning, when you needed to be in your self ring and, you know, have the morning routine that allows you to focus at work, that you're doing that. It also means that when you had the opportunity to engage with your family the previous evening, so that you get that positive mental and emotional energy and you sleep well, that you took the time to do that. And so a simplistic answer, well, yeah, probably, Swami, it is I think the key is asking yourself, where do I need to be focusing my right now to be able to do well in my other rings later? That's where I would come down, because you're right. Part of the philosophy has been work-life balance, and I dislike that term, because our lives are unbalanced. And if you think about a circus is unbalanced. There's a lot going on in one ring, and maybe something small going on in another, and then maybe there's nothing going on in the other one. And so it's okay to be unbalanced, but over the period of the performance, you're going to see great acts in all three rings. And when I'm coaching clients, excuse me, around this whole idea, I say, okay, don't look at just today. Because if you look at just today, it's probably going to scare you, because you may have to have a 12-hour work day, and you're going to have to go home and hug your family, eat some dinner, and go to bed, because you've got a deadline you're up against. But then near the end of the week, when things start slowing down, let's plan some activities that you can do with your family or with your friends, so that you start, rebuilding or encouraging that relationship ring to be in a better place. Let's figure out some ways you can engage more in some self-care, personal wellness type activities. So over the period of the week, it'll look a little more, yes, balanced, but on a daily basis, it wouldn't.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. It's a great one.
Yeah, so we have another question in the chat from Neil Kantan. He asks, do you see the Far East was doing the right thing with the afternoon siesta? And also now the Far East is looking at forest rejuvenation once in every year as a vacation of sorts. So he wanted your thoughts on these ideas.
Oh, I absolutely think that the Far East has the right idea here to take that break, that intermission, as Anise called it from my book Juggling Elephants, because we get so busy checking boxes. We get so busy just trying to mark items off on our list or things that we need to get done. We just don't stop often enough to say, how are things going? What changes do I need to make? And so I think the afternoon siesta is, a great idea, power nap, whatever you want to call it. And then the longer type of event where you actually, step out for a while, I think is of value. The key is it's what you do during that break. I talk about the 3 R's. And I think during any break, you have to take care of the 3 R's. The first R is rest. And I don't just mean physical rest. What kind of rest do you need? Is it mental rest? Is it emotional rest? What is it that you need rest from? I think that's the first piece. The second one is replenish. During that intermission, during that stepping away, what are you replenishing that normally keeps you motivated and working at peak efficiency? I mean, if you're standing up and stretching, then that's replenishing the oxygen levels in your blood because, you know, you're moving. If you're taking deep breath, that's increasing oxygen. If you're walking around, that gets, you know, things moving. Maybe it's isolation. You know, you've been isolated for a while working on something. You just need some human interaction. Maybe that's what's missing that normally keeps you motivated. We've seen that a lot in people working from home here in the States, is that, you know, they've got this isolation and they need to be more proactive about engaging with others when they're taking a break. So that's the second one, is replenish. The third one is to refocus. I think anytime we step away, that it's important that once we've got the rest we need, once we've, you know, replenished what's missing, is we've got to take that moment to go, which ring is most important for me to be in right now? Where does my focus need to be? And we can't get there as effectively, I don't think, if we haven't stepped away to get that perspective, because we're just too close, and stepping away gives us that opportunity. So my thoughts. I see a question. Yes, I see a question in the chat. Oh, there we go. To get it all up there. I do create to do, but during the day focus on do what is priority for others leads to inefficient of time management. Most of the time items go into do list. What can I do independently so that I can complete to do? Great question there. And you can see it over in the chat. One of the things that I think is important is, going back to what I talked about earlier, if you've got priority items that you believe need to be completed, I think it's important to be able to communicate that to that person who's asking the question. I think it's important to, you know, whether it's your supervisor, whether it's a coworker, is just to simply get some clarity on that. Is when they bring you that item and you've got other items that you thought were a priority, use the magic 3 words of help me understand. Okay, my priority today was to focus on this because I thought we want to get this done. Help me understand how this request aligns with that one. You know, help me understand which one goes first. I want to make sure I'm working on what's most important. A lot of people won't ask that question because they're afraid of looking weak and not being able to get everything done. I think it's asking from a position of strength, is to say to that individual, you know, help me understand, you know, which one of these, how do you see these two fitting together? Now, they may look at you and go, I don't care, just get them both done. That's a different story that we can't address in the scope of things today. The other thing to do is use that strategy of yes, no, yes. Is, okay, here's what I'm working on. I can't get to it right now. And then could I work on it this afternoon? Or could I work on it tomorrow morning? That's another strategy. A last one that might work for you is think about a time block. Is there a time of day when you're less likely to get interrupted by other people? And if so, try to use that time to really work hard on those pieces that are so important, and then protect that block that you use. When people want to, you know, bring something to you, or bring something, you say, this is my focus time, and when I get this done, oh wow, I'll be able to fully focus on your item. So that's another suggestion, but it's a common challenge. So thank you for bringing it to us today.
That was very insightful. I have a follow-up question as others are warming up. What if the elephant in the room is your supervisor, your manager?
Okay.
He's the one distracting you and wasting time or being inefficient.
Yeah, that is a difficult one. Depending on the degree of trust that there is between you and that manager, I think it's time to have a conversation. And again, how can we come at it from a position of strength and not of weakness, and show desire to get things done. And so I think it begins with, I want to talk about how things are getting done. And, my goal is to always be as focused as possible on results, or, meeting our highest priorities. And I want to make sure that I am, focused in the right places. And currently I have this, and this. And, I'm trying to figure out kind of which one needs the most attention from me right now. So I think, putting it out there to the supervisor, giving them the opportunity to help you prioritize. That's part of their job, I think, is one strategy. Another one is you use me if you want to as your crutch to say, I participated in a learning and development session today where the gentleman talked about time blocks. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trying to create a time block of 9 to 10 a.m. where I work on, and then mention something that's of highest priority to that supervisor. So, is it possible that from 9 to 10, I could be left alone, or from 9 to 11, because I really want to get this done, because I know it's important to our team. And you're being authentic there, and you're asking for something. And unless you're a supervisor that has an ego the size of, as we would say here in the States, ego the size of Texas, they're probably going to go, oh, wow, they're trying to do a better job. How can I support them to make that happen? So I think it starts with having that conversation from a position of strength, that you want to be so focused on the highest priorities of the team, and this is a way that you see you could be more effective. That's a start.
And that's a wonderful way of looking at this. I'm sure it's a question that's unasked through most of us, and I kind of surfaced it. Thank you so much. Yep. It's a wonderful way of looking at things.
Well, thank you, Swami. Thank you for asking it, because it's a common challenge. It really is. The thing I find is that people they don't know how to approach it with their supervisor or their manager. And even if you wanted to start by, I want to improve. One of the things that I am focusing on in 2021 is I want to improve my productivity. And here's a way that I think I can do that. Now, you've got the manager's full attention, because the manager's going, yes, improve your productivity. And then you say, I would love to carve out about 90 minutes where I can work undisturbed. And then take the conversation from there and see where it goes. But I think giving that manager the opportunity to be a partner with you in it versus trying to work against them or make them feel like that they have been a source of the problem is a much better approach to go positive. Okay, productive. Okay, let's get this one up. Oops. Okay. All right. What are your thoughts on having productive meetings, especially in the current scenario with virtual meetings? Oh, how much time do we have? I think the key here is if you are struggling with virtual meetings, first of all, they've got to be shorter. Productive meetings have to be shorter than on-site meetings or face-to-face meetings. Secondly, it's having less introductory stuff, less reporting. Put that out in some type of electronic format, whether it's Slack or just an email or whatever technology you use. It's getting all that stuff out of the way and raising the expectation that people will have read it and have digested it before the meeting. One of the reasons that meetings become so bloated and so large is that we go, well, I sent you the stuff, so let's go over it and then we'll talk about it. No, raise the expectation level. And then if you're leading the meeting, ask some tough questions at the beginning that will make sure they did read it. Because the first time that they're in a meeting and they realize, oops, Jones is serious. He really did expect us to read this before the meeting. Then the second meeting you have, they'll be ready because they don't want to be caught off guard. So I think that's a key. One of the keys to a productive meeting. Another one is more frequent breaks. Giving people the opportunity to step away. My philosophy, like I've got a 3-hour time management training, a virtual training this morning with my client or with my people who are participating. Then we'll take 5 minutes every hour or the first hour, and then we'll take 10 minutes the second hour. We'll go back to 5 minutes before, the third hour. But giving people those breaks is so important because Zoom fatigue is real. Looking at that dot or looking at the screen gets so tiring. So giving people more breaks, I think, is really key there. The last thing I'll say, I could talk about productive meetings for a lot, but I don't want to become an example of an unproductive meeting, is, think about your participants' backgrounds. And I know that sounds strange, but people are, like I said, our brains are information seekers. And if you've got a distracting background or you've got a virtual background where every time you move, you get that halo or that comet effect of things kind of moving around. People get caught up in that and then they're not as focused. I just think that's something else that can be done to help meetings be more productive. I could say a lot more, but I will stop it there in case there are other questions. Other questions?
Questions? Any participants with questions?
Yeah, if there's no further questions, I can invite Jitendra to unmute and just have a quick vote of thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Jones. Very, very informative and useful session. Of course, useful really depends on how effectively we use it. So thank you so much. It has been very enlightening, insightful. Many a times we are caught in problems, but we don't take the time to step back and really evaluate what is really weighing us down, what we should prioritize. And these ideas and tips that you have shared are very helpful. I'm sure people at Sasken will definitely use it going forward. Anything, like I said, is as effective, is as useful as effectively used. So thank you so much. On behalf of everyone at Sasken, I would like to thank you and really very, very insightful session, Jones. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I can't tell you how honored I am that the organization like Sasken and the work that you do and the intelligence that I have in front of me about IT and about technology. That's not my world. I love learning about it. I'm a consumer. I use that. So I thank you for finding value in my thoughts today, and look forward to being of service in any way in the future. You did see my email up there. If any of you have an offline thing you'd like to talk about, chat about, that's one of the things I have loved about this season, because I'm not traveling and I'm not engaging with clients in the same way, is that if there's something you'd like to work through, then I'd love to get on a Zoom interaction, a call of some kind, and just to talk through it, because that's how I learn. The number one about working through these types of tough things is just like you did today. Bring me your challenge. Let's talk about it. Let's ask some questions and figure out what's a small step that you could take to improve.
That's really wonderful. I think on top of what Jeetu has already said and expressed his thanks, and the wonderful introduction by Anis, I think I really find that there are a lot of takeaways, and I think, as my colleague Jeetu, a senior colleague, said, that these ideas can soon vaporize if we don't put them into action. So I made a bunch of notes. It's occupied a complete tab in my book. I'm sure the slides will be with us. I urge everyone on the call to reflect on everything that's been told, and please find your nugget of wisdom from here. It's going to make a change if you wanted to make a change. Thank you very much, Jones, for coming here. For being virtually here with us and really stepping us through a very structured way of how I think we can be happier as well. I think thriving finally leads to happiness, and I think that's what every one of us seeks. Thank you so much for giving us a very structured introduction to the art of thriving.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be with you today.
Jones, if you allow me, then I have just one last thing to share. Anis here. Am I audible?
Yes.
Sure, Anis, go on.
Okay. I think the three rings of life, the way I took it, and at some point in time I was really confused which ring to start with. Should it be work? Should it be life? Should it be relationship? I think I started with life because only when I was able to reflect on my own self, itself actually, when I say life, it's about the self. Only when I was able to dedicate some time for myself is when I was able to improve the relationship. Because the next focus was for me to improve the relationship, repair the relationship, and make sure the relationship remains smooth. And I think with the work actually it becomes very easy to be dealt with, and outcomes are very impressive and very bright. That's how I took it. Maybe that is something which probably if you want to figure out which ring to focus on, that's how I did it, and I think it worked very well for me. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you, Anis.
Swami sir, you're on mute.
Okay, so once again, this is a new skill I've learned in 2020. Speaking on mute. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Ameya. Thank you, Anis. Thank you, Vishal. And thank you, Jones, for a wonderful session. This is the Indian way of saying thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you. You are most welcome. You have a great evening.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
John.
Good day. Good day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Deepa, Ameya. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye to all.